Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here next time with the presentation about Sylius, an API platform. And today I would like to tell you how we end up with the migration to API Platform 3, the release that was already done 2 years ago. But it was quite a challenge for us to migrate to that. And I just wanted to sum it up, tell you great information that we finally did it. So, a little spoiler alert. But on the way, there were some problems, some issues, and that's what I would like to share with you today. So the presentation contains from 5 parts, and we usually will focus on that. So comments, tests, sub-resources, open API, which is documentation. Then there is some conclusion. But before that, let me shortly introduce myself. My name is Łukasz Chruściel. I co-own Commerce Weavers, the agency that is specializes in Sylius development. And to some extent, we also our specialization is headless e-commerce, because we already have 3 projects working with Sylius and API platform. 2 of them on a production, and 1 we are working right now hard to put it on the production. In the meantime, I'm also a core team lead at Sylius, which also I'm representing that internal team of Sylius with their efforts of migrating to API Platform 3. Now, once I said something, and for example, in 2022, I said that we'll migrate to API Platform 3, you don't have to remind me about it every year. So, luckily, now I can tell you that we finally did it. On the previous presentation, I did that it will happen for Sylius 1.13. The version was released this year. Unfortunately, it didn't contain that version, but API Platform 3 will be available with Sylius 2.0, which alpha version was already tagged. However, it's also important, or it's important for me to mention that this effort is not on me. It's also not even on the core team. It was mostly done by internal Sylius team. So the official effort lead was Grzegorz Sadowski and all the developers that work there: Jan, Kuba, Kamil, Michał, Rafał, Karol, who was involved into the development because it was a huge effort. Please, can you give them a round of applause? I hope that they will watch this presentation and then they will hear that you upload them. Also mentioning that because if you don't like anything that is on the slides, you can blame them, not me. Of course, you can blame me, but then I will deliver your blame to them, to Poland. Moving on, the scale of the migration. So until now, we are on the IP platform 2.7.18, so the last version that was available. It's already due date for over a year. And we actually, with Sylius 2.0, we go directly to version 3.4. That was published yesterday, and luckily it's already merged and it's available. So when you will go with Sylius 2.0, you already are using API Platform 3.4. And I already start trying with 4.0. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it yet, but let's see if we can push it even a little bit forward. Now, you all came with for the content, why it was so hard, but few more data about immigration itself. So why it was that complicated? It took us 750 commits to actually do the migration itself. It doesn't include all the previous work. It's 1,700 files that we had to change in the meantime, and altogether we changed 30,000 lines of code. Actually, it's almost the same amount, so we are like less than 1,000. We're about 1,000 lines more even. But you can see that the effort was huge. That's why it took so much time. All in all, right now, Sylius API with API platform contains 73 endpoints of the shop part, 188 endpoints of the admin part, which was also part of the migrating process. So before 3.0, we didn't have all of that, so we also add these lines. And actually, it also blew my mind a little bit because the whole integration with API platform right now contains 40,000 files across, 40,000 lines of code across 560 files. So it's also kind of huge effort. It's not only integration layer between IP platform, but all the logic that contains it, so all the processing of the order, etc. logic. But you can see why it was that complicated for us to migrate. And with the AP Platform 3, there are some awesome features, but there are also the awesome features were kind of main problems for us. So first of all, there was new metadata class, and under the hood we are playing with it a little bit. Secondly, new configuration reference. So previously the structure of the XML files were totally different. Right now there's new kind of operation which also make us some of the headaches. In addition, there is new architecture of providers and processors that we had to map it with the previous data transformers plus persisters that we had already. There's a whole new sub-resource architecture. I have the whole point about it, but previously it was a hell, and right now we are in the brave new world, and everything is really, really looking nice. And Sylius, let's be honest, is not the typical API platform use case. So most of you, let me ask you, who of you actually still uses API platform 2.x? Nice. But I use this because I have still projects on that. But I'm the only one in this room. That's impressive. And who of you is using on the production API platform? OK. Still congrats that you migrate to that. With the Sylius as a not typical use case, I meant that not only we're building something that the front end will use, we're also developing framework on the top of the framework that you will reuse. And most of the code is in the vendor. And because of that, we need to provide new extension layers to AP platform that was not meant at the first idea, because not many people are doing what we are doing here. That's why sometimes we had to dig really deeply into internals of AP platform. And because of that, some part of the migration was even harder than for most of you. But let's take a look into some examples. First, let's take a look into commands, what help us and what we change in them. So it was 2021 when I was on the stage, but in different room. And I was telling you already about the commands, so that any one of you listened to that speech? OK, thank you for repeating, thank you for being again on my speech. But most of you didn't, that's why I have really short reminder about the content. So the commands are meant in Sylius to decouple infrastructure from application. That means that they holds customer intention. So if the customer do something with the cart, pick it up, add something to the cart, we are transforming it to commands. Commands are dispatched to Sylius, and then Sylius can handle that logic on its own. And for our case, it's really important that commands never contain any entities. So commands are always simple DTOs that can be serialized and put to the database. And handlers are stateless. Therefore, on the handler level, we never ask for the currently logged in customer. We're never asking for the state of the request, because again, Sylius is a framework, so we need to provide, or we need to be sure that what is working there, it's stateless, because you may want to put it on the queue on the some command or consume it asynchronously. That's why we need to have it in mind with the design of the handlers. And it maintains the same behavior even if something with the framework change. It actually helps us a lot because main logic of most of the handlers stayed the same even though we changed to the new version. So command handlers, and that's one of the messages that I would like to share you, help us a lot to decouple directly from AP platform, and therefore the main logic of the classes stayed the same and will stay the same during the migration. Now, this is how more or less looks the architecture of Sylius plus API platform. So in the middle, you have the Sylius with all its logic about the application, so about e-commerce. And all around there is an infrastructure, which is part where we actually plugged API platform. And API platform is responsible for translating what the customer is sending to the command itself. Now, this line is where we began to, where we don't want to be stateful. So when there are, as arrow of command goes to the handler, there cannot be no information about the current state of the application. And that raises some problems. Because if we look at the request in a few seconds, the request contain more than just body. So now the question to you, what are the requests like? Because they say more than 1,000 words. Does any of you know? That's a joke about a slogan from Poland. But some advice, or the answer is in the front of your eyes. So can anyone tell me what are requests like? Sorry? Can you repeat, please answer something? Sorry? Requests are like Raffaello. They say it's more than 1,000 words. And if you will ask me questions at the end of the presentation, I will share that box and 2 more with you. So requests are more than just body of it. Request says more than 1,000 words. And mapping of the request body, it's not enough in our case. If we take a look into curl example of the request that actually can happen in Sylius, there's a lot of content, but let's take a look into the bottom part. This is mostly what is translated from the body of the request to the command. So we have that there's some particular product variant of quantity 1 that we would like to put to the cart. But this request, this curl, contains much more information. First of all, it contains a channel. So on which shop actually we put it to the cart. We don't need to put it anywhere in the body because we already know it based on the host name. So we need that information to properly actually transfer what customer is intending to the body. In addition, we need to know what cart we will be using, so we need a token of the order. We have information about the language, because once the customer is going through the checkout, we need to know about the language that they're using, so the rest of the communication, for example, emails, will be in the same language. And there's, of course, information about the current user, so we need to authorize somehow user, and we need this information to handle properly cart. So we need to assign the cart to the customer if he's logged. So these are all the information, all on the top, that we need in the body of our request, of our command, because we don't want to have them stateful. So the handlers will be stateless. That means that all of this data needs to be placed in a command without touching Sylius or without touching handlers. Now, the problem is that AP Platform by default only translates the body of the request. And because we need a hostname, language header, authorization header, URI attributes, it's not that simple to just map one-to-one. Therefore, we add something what is called command enrichment. And before, with Sylius, with AP Platform 2.7, we had something that not only we wanted these 2 data from the body, but we also added an additional interface, order token value, our interface, which we're using setter to enrich command with additional value. But that means that, first of all, our commands are not created correctly according to the rules because they're not fully created based on the constructor. Then we need to enrich them. Without it, they do not contain proper information, etc. Secondly, the data transformers were removed from AP Platform. So we had to do something about it. And we find out that with the AP Platform 3, there is a new feature that we can actually extend. So there's something like serializer context builder, and inside of it, there's information about default constructor arguments. And actually, what we can do is merge it with some additional values that we would like to put there. So there are default arguments that will be placed to the constructor anyway, and we're enriching available constructor arguments with what we want to add. And this way, when I have right now my add to cart command, I can add a new attribute on the top of it, and that will mean that I have order token value as one of the arguments in the constructor. Therefore, my commands are finally immutable, properly created, and I enriched the body or the content that can be added there with additional information which are not only in the request body. Therefore, if I'm sending something like that, the value of the token value is transferred to the constructor of the command, even though it's not a default AP Platform behavior. It works great, and I can totally recommend it. So as a result, we have here a better design because the commands finally are immutable, as there should be as DTOs. Therefore, they're also immutable, which helps with debugging, with tracing what's happening there. There's nothing that can change actual values. There's no case of null values, so you don't need to protect null values in your handlers. And we have better decoupling from the framework, because previously we had to need some interfaces which are with setters, which are directly coupled to AP Platform. And right now we have just metadata of attribute, which is still something, but just smaller part of the decoupling. Now, moving on to the tests. Again, something that I already discussed 3 years ago. So, reminder for the rest of you who didn't hear that speech. We are using 2 kinds of tests in Sylius and AP Platform migration. First one is BDD for the behavior, and we are using Behat for that. And second part are tests, contract tests for API design, and we are using PHP unit for that. Now, how does it look like? So first of all, we have scenarios that are written in plain English without mentioning anything about the content of the request. But basically, we have some description or business requirements over the feature. Then there is some background, which will be repeated for every scenario that we have there. So some basic stuff that needs to store to operate. And then we have the test itself, which will be under the hood translated to the requests to API. But the point is that in any place here, we are placing direct requests to API platform, we are rather building it based on the sentences. And this means that in this case, both UI, so full stack version and headless version of Sylius will be using the same test to check if it behaves the same way. Therefore, we can be sure that Sylius as a framework behaves exactly the same, no matter how you use it. The second type of tests were contract tests, because what we noticed is that with this kind of the previous tests, we never knew how the response really looks like. Plus, if anything will be added to the request, we wouldn't notice because we had never tested the whole content. It rather translates what was sent to us, and then we were just checking given values. So to that, we add also contract testing, which is also available in API platform. By default, we were setting up some basic data, using commands from the previous point to prepare our environment, then making requests and comparing them with some particular file. And particular file looks more or less like this, which is something awesome to show to the front-end developers if you work with them. This is how the response will look like. You can take it out, use as a mocks from that. They're really easy to understand them. And based on that, we were able to, one by one test by one, to turn on API platform 3 and check what has changed. So we know that from the contract perspective, there's no many changes. So if you have front-end application that work with Symfony 2.7, it will work front-end application almost for sure, or almost for almost all the cases with API platform 3 in Sylius. So that helped us to be sure that the contract didn't change. And in addition, it also helps us to granular, step-by-step move from one version to another. So it was our safety net, so it protects us from the regression of the application. It's also easy to determine the changes in the contract, which help us to also minimize them and minimize problems of the other developers. And it was a way to do it one by one. And I can totally recommend, because without the safety net like that, a migration, at least for me, it's almost impossible, at least for also the project like that. Let's move on to the third point, which is about sub-resources. So why we do even need them? In Sylius, we have some quite deeply nested structures. And for example, when you add something to the cart, or actually if you would like to operate on some order items, you need to know to which cart, because order item without cart doesn't make too much sense. Another problem is that even though we have token value as order identifier, which is randomized string, then order item IDs are auto-incremented. And using auto-incremented values in your API is actually a vast security vulnerability, because if you do not protect them properly, someone can iterate over your shop and actually learn something more about what is in the cart, what items are bought. You can actually spoil some customer or have security leak. So using auto-increment as identifier is a terrible idea. We shouldn't use it, but because of the architecture of the Sylius, that it's 10 years old, and that's how we actually designed application in 2014. We have auto-increments, and we would like to protect them. And one of the ways of protecting it is to put order items behind orders, which has randomized token, which is not that easy to check the content of. So back in the days with API platform 2.7, it was like Wild West, horror, and hell. Using sub-resources was really terrible. I tried to ask artificial intelligence to help me present how I felt when working with that, and this is what I came up with. I have to say that right now I'm afraid of my work, because not only it actually understands me, it also replicated my skills of Photoshop. So I had to share it with you. That's how I felt when working with 2.7 and sub-resources. And this is because, for example, to add something to the cart, I had to use on the order, not order item, on the order level, I had to use item operation with shop add item, which were using collection operation as item operation just to mitigate the behavior of API platform 2.7. So, as I tell you, hell, really terrible place to be. Now, nowadays, it's the really shiny, perfect place with plenty of trees, and you can finally smile when working with API platform, because finally we have resource classes that I can directly reference, that's order item. I have proper URI template, which I can translate to whatever I wish, and then have my operation and several operations on that resource, which is much better now than it was back in the days. The problem with this picture is that you can see some problems at the bottom, because not everything works perfectly. I would like to spend some time today or during next day, because we found out 2 more issues with that. I guess, who of you actually used really deeply nested items in your API, so at least 3 levels? Can you raise your hand if you have problems like that? And that explains a lot, because we are probably, mostly we are using that feature. Because, for example, double-nested sub-resource configuration make it harder for Sylius to behave. The problem is that, for example, an order contains, we have order with order totals there. Order contains with several order items, which each of them points to some product that is will be that's part of the placement of the order. And then each order contains several order items, and each order item contains several order item units, which translates to the quantity. Now, why we need this structure? Because in some cases of e-commerce, you actually need to know exactly what you are selling, because one order item unit may be connected or translated to some serialization number, or so you sell directly this item. In other case, we have the case that each order item unit can be configured. So you can pack it in some way, you can write something, you can actually customize each order item unit to your needs. That's why we need that deeply structure, because we are also in the framework. The problem is that what we would like to have is something like that. So for my item units, I would like to have an IRI, which contains from order, token, items, order item, and then order item unit, and then identifier or this particular order item unit. Without all of this information, order item unit doesn't make that much sense, and because of the OWASP recommendation, I would like not to use IRI. But however, for now, we are only able to do identifiers like that anyway, so we need to expose that, and that's some kind of the problem that I would like to address in the later phase of our migration. Secondly, we also find out that creation of sub-resource, so for example, in this case, we have a promotion. Promotion can have several promotion coupons, and the creation of these promotion coupons from admin perspective also is not working as expected in the 100%, because it's also not that typical to create sub-resources this way, instead of putting them to the collection. So we also have another issue that we need to address when going live. Luckily, we're only on alpha version of that, so we still have time to figure it out. Now, moving on to the almost last section of it, Open API. Open API, of course, I mean the documentation. And API platform takes documentation really seriously. So one of the key features is that we have API reference that is usable, that you can actually play with it. You can give it to the front-end developers. They can actually check it out, see how it behaves. You can actually apply it on your application. And with that, it's awesome feature, one of the key, especially for the framework like Sylius. So we would like to take an advantage of it and use it and recommend usage of it to all of the backend and front-end developers. The problem is that at least it's not enough. And in our case, we found some cases that we were not able to easily configure. And for example, it's about cart pickup. So when you are picking up the cart, as I mentioned previously, we need to know a locale. And with API platform and Open API docs, it wasn't that easy to determine how to declare in which locale you are picking it up. So we wanted to add additional box with accept language header. Plus, we wanted to declare what values are available there, because there cannot be just random value. It needs to be value that's defined in the shop. To do that, it wasn't that simple. So we had to create something called documentation modifiers. Perhaps there will be a space and you would be interested in it, so we can contribute to API platform. But the point is that Open API Factory allows you to play with the object. So we have context. Based on that context, we can return Open API reference, and then based on that reference, we can actually change something. So we introduce documentation modifiers to the system that allows us, so we are creating Open API documentation, then give it to the extension point that allows you to plug and play whatever you wish, or just plug anything you wish, or change anything you wish. So each modifier does its own job, and we modify one by one. In this case, for example, with locale, we are just adding a new parameter, which is always a header that allows you for every request that you are doing from the documentation to change the header of the language header. Therefore, you can actually play and see how Sylius with AP platform really works. And that kind of extension point would be really useful to have probably, so we can consider if it's worth contributing to AP platform. Let me know if you will need it, because maybe it's also only our case and it will just stay in Sylius. Now, in our case, we have like 16 of different cases that we needed to extend documentation. So I think that there may be other use cases for you as well to take advantage of it. Now, and that's all from the IP documentation. So I would like to leave you with some thoughts after that. First of all, command patterns works really good to decouple framework from your application logic, and I recommended it highly. It's not about that your application needs to be decoupled from the framework because you will change from Symfony to Laravel. Like with AP platform right now, it is possible, of course, but it's not the point. You're not doing it because you will change from Symfony to Laravel. It's because Symfony over the years will change. So Symfony 2 and Symfony 7 are kind of different frameworks. So decoupling from framework is not about changing the framework entirely, it's about upgrading it over the time. And actually, we would have even more problems with upgrading to AP Platform 3 if there wouldn't be for comments. So I can just truly recommend you using this approach, especially for business-oriented cases. So with a little bit of the effort, you can also put more content than just request body to your commands. And perhaps this is also worth to contribute to AP Platform one day, what we created. Secondly, tests for us are must-have for migration, like for any project, because it's the safety net that protects you from degradation. I cannot stress out how much I recommend using them, especially contract testing with API test case that it's built in AP platform. It works great. New operation system rocks. However, we still have some things to improve handling of it in Sylius. And that would be all from me. Thank you very much.